Cool. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Nancy Ford. I'm a professor of physics at Simon Fraser University, located near Vancouver, British Columbia, on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations, to whom we're all very grateful for their stewardship of the lands, the beautiful lands on which we work. And I am on the Division of Biological Physics Executive Committee, along with a few others here in this call. And we thought it would be useful to have a sort of roughly monthly series of engagement events online for people in the DBio community to try to build connections virtually and maybe answer some questions and serve some needs for people. So this is one of the events, and Orrin and Shindell very kindly offered to coordinate this for people who are at PUIs doing biophysics research. Just so you know, there's other upcoming events, and I can just show you briefly how to access information about those. So we do post information to the Engage platform and also on Twitter. But you can also go, if you just Google APS DBio, you get to the main Division of Biological Physics page here. And if you click on workshops and networking, then this takes you to the list of the events that are planned. And so this is the second one of these. Next month, we will be having one about applying for faculty positions, which is perhaps of interest to at least one person I know of, Avanish. And so please share information about that. There's also the registration Zoom link here. We're having a report from the Bill Bialek and team, who just recently wrote the decadal survey of biophysics for the National Academies. And so they'll be presenting about that and actions that we should be taking to help further the aims that they suggest. So we'll learn about that. We've got teaching biophysics coming up in August as well, later in August. The details aren't here and the link isn't here yet, but it will be soon. It's just getting finalized. Communicating biophysics and so on. So do check out this page for information. And also, we plan to record the event. So if you're not able to attend, but you want to learn about, for example, how to organize a session at a March meeting or other things, you can catch the recording afterwards. So yeah, welcome. And I will turn it over to Orrin to facilitate the rest of this.
Great. Thanks so much, Nancy. Hello, everybody. My name is Orrin Shindell. I'm an assistant professor in physics at Trinity University, which is a liberal arts college in San Antonio, Texas. And I'm participating with the community engagement committee for DBio. And we thought it would be a nice idea to have a session, which was kind of a networking event for faculty working in biophysics at PUIs, so that people could meet each other. And so the structure of this event, the idea was to have a few panelists like to work at a PUI. So our three panelists are Janet Sheung from Claremont McKenna College, Ray Robertson-Anderson from San Diego University. Is it University of San Diego?
Yeah, University of San Diego.
Okay. And Ben Stottrup from Augsburg University. And we were going to have breakout rooms based on the topics that they discuss, but there aren't so many people here. So maybe after they give 5 to 10 minutes discussion, we can all just stay in this room and folks can feel free to make comments, ask questions. And I think that's about it for my introduction. And I guess, Janet, would you like to go ahead and start?
Yeah, sure. Is there a way am I allowed to share my screen? Because I have just a few slides.
Yeah, let me adjust that. Oh, you should be able to, I think.
Okay, are you seeing slides?
Yep.
Yep, okay. All right. So hi, my name is Janet Sheung. I am assistant professor of physics at Claremont Colleges. And I guess when I heard about this networking event, I thought it reminded me of, the aspect of setting up a lab on a budget. It reminded me of the time I was at Vassar College. It's my previous job. I was a visiting assistant professor. As you may know, visiting assistant professors get no startup. And what happened to me was 3 months after I started that job, a tenure-line professor quit. And the chair of the department offered me the lab, which was set up for acoustic physics. So you will see on this picture, there's a lot of actually foam panels on the walls. That may not be obvious, but anyway, they also said, we have an optical table no one wants anymore, so we move it in there for you. And so that's how I started up trying to do research with students. And I guess I just want to mention a few things that I wish I knew back then. This is definitely not all the tips that, this is not the only things that will be useful, but it's a few things I thought of. Things I wish I knew is, number one, manufacturers have demos. So you basically used items. I'm an experimental biophysicist. I do a lot of microscopy. I build microscopes. And so, for example, I recently purchased an objective at 25% discount. So I just cropped this out of the invoice. It was my lucky day. And if you make friends with the sales reps, you'll often get demos. And so basically, I've gotten a habit of initiating all my conversations with reps with, do you have demos available? And more often than not, the answer is yes. It may require hacking things together a little bit, but you save so much money. Anyway, and then I buy a lot of optical components and things like that on eBay. I know people that I have colleagues who have purchased like liquidation batches from companies. So I haven't personally managed that, but some people manage to set up quite a bit of their lab by going on eBay or even on auction sites. And another thing I wish I knew is, as a grad student, I was trained to follow protocols exactly, follow the exact item number, catalog number someone bought. And when I actually had to start doing research with my students and there isn't enough money, I learned really quickly that there is a concept of good enough. So in this situation, RPI is where I buy a lot of my chemicals. And I would say they are more like 98% pure as opposed to 99.8% pure. And you save quite a bit that way, and it often doesn't matter. So I guess, obviously there are some protocols where it will matter, but often you will still save a lot of money going for the cheaper thing. And then when I really need something and I couldn't figure out a cheaper way to get it in the States, I will buy from some of the made in China sites. So I guess in this case, I may have an advantage in that I can read Chinese. So I can totally get it. Some of you may not feel as comfortable, but Banggood is a place that has a lot of electronics and things like that for cheap. And I'm happy to share my experience in more detail. And then I learned to make a lot of things myself. So 3D printing, Arduino, those things, you can make a lot of things that do the same function for much less, like often a tenth of the cost. Let's see. And another thing is I learned really quickly that data doesn't have to come from equipment in my lab. It can come from equipment in other people's labs. And I had a lot of luck talking just to random biologists in my college and in neighboring colleges, because often biologists have too much data and they need someone to help them do an analysis. And so imagine if some colleague shows up and says, hey, that data that you're seeing in your hard drive, I can turn it to paper and add your name on it, right? You make yourself really popular. So that tended to yield some projects. And I know many people who actually got quite expensive used equipment from their own supervisors. And then another thing may not be as obvious is I also talked to folks from large universities who have kind of large grants, and I'm talking about like NSF centers, multi-PI grants. And often they're looking for people like us who will link their research to underrepresented groups or undergrads. And people like us getting involved on their grant, it will actually help them get their next grant. And so I've gotten good positive responses by talking to major labs that way as well. And then I also was able to get some time on equipment and just kind of sample small amounts of sample by talking with people at research training courses. So for myself, it was Marine Biological Lab. Cold Spring Harbor might have similar things. And so those are kind of summer courses meant for early faculty or postdocs. It's a good way to meet people if you don't already know people who you may want to collaborate with. But anyway, I'm happy to talk more about any of this because I know not all of this will apply to everyone. And then just one more thing is money. Internal research grants is really low, relatively low competition. I've also had luck just talking to my chair and the dean of faculty and telling them, hey, the student really wants to do research with me, but I don't have money to buy these supplies. And sometimes at the end of the fiscal year, they have money they need to spend, they'll just spend it on you. So, and then sometimes I was able to get money doing course development, like doing an advanced lab development, but then some of that equipment and supplies can be used in your research as well. Okay. Sorry, I think I'm talking way too long. Let me try to speed up here. I wouldn't consider myself an expert on mentoring undergrads because I think both Ray and Ben probably are at the job much longer than me. Just wanted to share one thing that made a strong impression on me when I was pre-tenure, or I mean, I'm still pre-tenure, but early on, I was at an NSF kind of how to apply for grants workshop. And the program officer showed this thing, which is, I guess, from their perspective, how they decide what to fund. And so basically, when you're at a PhD producing institution, you're more on the high risk, high reward side, which is like this chunk of the high priority. And then at an undergrad institution, you'd want to be lower risk, a little bit more standard protocol, and a little bit more of the value add is in a lot of people doing the same thing over and over. For example, characterizing something, right? Or colleagues who have army of undergrads just testing out chemical conditions to crystallize something, on 96 well plates, that sort of thing, tends to work much better in an undergrad institution because it's not as risky and the time horizon is shorter. And yes, standard operating procedures, I've never regretted a single moment I spent writing those. And I generally assign one student one figure on a manuscript. So a team of students would publish a paper. And okay, sorry, I think I ran out of my time, so I'm gonna let someone else talk. But please feel free to ask me more questions if any of this interests you.
Thanks so much, Janet. That was great. Let's
okay,
go
let me unshare my screen here.
Oh.
How do I unshare my screen? Stop. Okay, there you go.
Right, and now Ray is going to talk about grants.
And yeah, hi everyone. So I'm actually going to talk about grant proposal writing, just give a few tips. Can everyone see my slides? Yeah, okay. Oops. The slides now. Okay, so I'm gonna just, I'll try to be brief and then you guys can, please ask questions. But to preface kind of the advice that I'm gonna give or help you think about when you're writing proposals, I'm gonna tell you some ugly truths and then how do we deal with those. So first ugly truth is that the reviewers will not read your entire proposal. You will, especially you know, NSF, you have submit a 15-page proposal, they won't read it all. And different reviewers will read different parts. Reviewers may not have expertise in your field. And at the same time, they may think they do. Reviewers evaluate about 5 to 20 proposals at a time. Reviewers are skeptics. So I'm just laying these, so these are some ugly truths that you're just going to have to deal with. And we can talk about how you deal with those. Some not so ugly truths. Program directors want to help you and they will shoot you straight. So they will be honest with you. They don't want you wasting your time. They don't want to waste their reviewers' time. Another not so ugly truth. You are an expert in your field. You have a PhD. You have a faculty position. You are an expert. Reviewers don't just fund proposals, they fund you. They fund you as the PI. And you're an expert. And there's a community of scholars willing to help you succeed. Okay, so how do we deal with the ugly truths? The fact that reviewers will not read your entire proposal. First thing you do, make the first page the strongest. Most reviewers will read the first page. And if you hook them then, if they like what they read on the first page, they will continue reading more intently. If they're not impressed by the first page or they're not drawn in, they will skim at best the rest of the proposal because they've already made up their mind that they're not, you know, they're not going to recommend this for funding. But if they're intrigued, then they're going to keep reading more strongly to, you know, well, yeah, they're going to focus more. So your first page, you should spend the most time on. In your specific aims, and I'll talk a little bit more about specific aims at the end of this, but they should be clear and concise and on the first 1 to 2 pages. You want the very first page or first 2 pages to basically spell out what you're going to do and why, and get them excited and also have them understand what you're doing. Try to include a figure on every page and have a self-contained caption. Because again, reviewers are having, you know, this giant stack of proposals, all, you know, over 10 pages, 15 pages, and they're scrolling through to try to figure out if they should read this one more closely or not. If there's a figure on every page, then at least they'll draw to their eye and they can read the caption and then try to look in the text where that figure is talked about a little bit more. You know, when you're going through all this and you get to another page that's just all text, it's, you know, they tend to not read. Okay, so use bold, italics, and colored fonts to make things important. So every 1 to 2 paragraphs should have some form of emphasis, be it italics, bold, or colored fonts, and choose one and stick with it. Don't, you know, be throwing around a lot of different things, but I mean, I would not recommend underlining because that just adds more ink to the page and it's kind of, it's harder for the reviewer to read. So consider that every paragraph you write should have one takeaway message. And repeat yourself because again, reviewers will not read your entire proposal. So, you know, right up front, state what you're going to do and why. And then when you're describing what you're going to do and why, say again and say it again. So just, yeah, be repetitive. And don't use jargon. You might think that by using jargon, it makes you sound like an expert, like you know what you're talking about. But again, the reviewer is not necessarily an expert in your field, and jargon actually makes it seem like you don't actually know what you're talking about because you don't know how to explain what you're doing to a general audience. Okay, reviewers may not have expertise in your field. This is true. So what you need to do is you need to make clear why what you're proposing is transformative, disruptive, revolutionary, all those buzzwords, because for you, it's quite obvious why what you're proposing is so transformative. But somebody outside of your field very well will say, well, why the heck would you want to do this? So don't assume that the reviewer is going to make that connection. And don't force them to make the connection. Make it explicitly. Even if it seems very obvious, make the connection for them. And also, I mean, you want to cite a lot of literature in any proposal, but make sure the literature is recent, especially when you're making the case of why this is important. If you're citing a bunch of papers from the 1980s, it's not going to be convincing. So just when you're thinking about your literature, make sure you're citing recent high impact papers. And again, this kind of goes back to number one, but be explicit. Okay, do not assume that reviewers are going to make the connections, because what is obvious to you is not obvious to them. And make your broader impacts strong. So talk about how the research has a broader impact, you know, like what you're actually proposing to do, how that'll have some impact on society and community, and also, you know, how the training your students. So as a PUI, this is your, as a faculty member at a PUI, this is your chance to really shine. Talk about all the undergraduates you're mentoring, all the ways, you know, the strong mentoring infrastructure you've set up, and you know, how funding will enhance your institution, enhance the research infrastructure at your institution, and like, you know, increase diversity, train the workforce. So a lot of times broader impacts are kind of an afterthought, and they're now more than ever, they're really looked at closely, and especially from a PUI, they're looking for your broader impacts. Okay, so reviewers are skeptics. Again, they want to find ways. Well, yeah, I mean, since they're having to rank all these proposals, they're looking for things to be skeptical about. So one thing you need to do is tell them why you and only you can achieve your proposed project. So you've sold them, you know, I've already said, make sure you sell them on why the proposed research is important. That's important. But now the question is, well, why are you the person to do it? So you have to make both that case. Not only is this important research, but you and only you have this unique skill set to succeed more than anyone else. Okay, so make sure you make that point clear. And alternatives and pitfalls. I mean, this I'm hoping everyone knows, but this is very important. You cannot, I mean, there is no experiment, there is no proposed research that is totally foolproof. If it is, then it's not worth funding. So anytime when you're proposing to do something, you should always talk about possible pitfalls and what you might do to overcome those. And they can be simple, and you don't have to have one for every single thing, but it's you know, that is an absolute, you will not get funded if you don't have those. And try to make your aims, your specific aim, as independent as possible and not building on each other. Now it's hard to make them completely independent, but the idea is that, you know, if aim 2 requires success of aim 1 and aim 3 requires success of aim 2, if you don't succeed at aim 1, then the rest of the proposal is a failure. So try to make it so that you can make progress on all of your aims, or at least make progress on aim 1 and aim 2 independently, and maybe 3 depends on a little of that. Provide a timeline. You know, have a table with a timeline. At least it shows, maybe you think it's like a waste of space, but it shows that you've thought through things. You know, you've thought about how you're going to spend your time, how much time things are going to take, and that you've really thought through the project. And also provide collaboration letters. This is really important from a PUI faculty member to establish some collaborations, even if it's somebody, you know, that somebody's going to like send you protein. Or it could be like a collaboration letter from your Office of Undergraduate Research saying that they'll like help with like mentoring students or like provide you resources. Or it's a collaboration letter with somebody that you're doing outreach with, or just anyone that's going to be involved in your research. Provide as many collaboration letters as you can to show that you have a strong network. Be specific about what approaches you'll use and what information they'll provide. So don't, when you say, you know, you're gonna determine this thing, say how you're gonna do it. And then like, make sure you give metrics. If you have preliminary results, show them. And preliminary results can be like published results. That's okay. And if it's just, you know, it doesn't have to be stuff that came out of your lab like a few weeks before. And also list explicitly your metrics and benchmarks of success. So how will you know, like, if you succeeded at A1? You know, you're going to do these things, you're going to measure X, Y, Z, and from that you're going to look for this, and you know, based on this you'll know if you've succeeded or not. Okay, reviewers evaluate 5 to 20 proposals at a time. So what do? Hook them early. Again, your first page should be the most important page. Organization is very important. Make your proposal easy to read. Make sure that they can, you know, go back and forth and they can follow things clearly, and that they understand your aims from the very beginning. Include descriptive subheadings and figures. You know, well, if you have like a subheading that's like methods, maybe that's not that informative. Make sure they know what the subheading make it a little more descriptive so they're in a place to understand it. And also be meticulous. Proofread it over and over again. Have your friends proofread it. Little things like that, like typos, poor formatting, are red flags that you're not careful. Again, repeat yourself because they read a lot of proposals. Include flowcharts, cartoons, graphics, tables, anything to break up the text and make it easy, what you're proposing to be digestible. Use bold, italics, and colors. I've already said, cite the literature. And yeah, this is important. The reviewer who's reviewing your proposal could be in your field, and if you do not cite their work, they will be offended. So just keep that in mind. Like, you know, make sure you cite the literature. Okay, and I know I'm running low on time. So the not so ugly truths, program directors want to help you and will shoot you straight. So email your program director when you know there's a proposed, like a, you know, if you think that there's a program that would fit your research, email them, request to set up a phone meeting or a Zoom meeting. When you email them, include your CV. And also before your meeting, send them a project summary, like your 1-page NSF project summary. Send it to them so that maybe they'll read it, maybe they won't, but at least they have, most of the time they will have read your project summary if you send it to them, and your CV, and have questions ready to ask so that you've shown you've done your homework. And yeah, I mean, just establish a relationship with the program officer because they will shoot you straight. And even though it's the reviewers that rank the proposals, program officers have some leeway on if you're like on the cusp, and they, you know, they're confident in you and they want to fund you, they have some wiggle room to pull you up. And obviously, if you're ranked very poorly, they can't do anything about it. But if you've established a relationship with them and they like what you do, if you're on the cusp, they can find money for you. Okay, you're an expert in your field, so show off your expertise. Cite your own papers. Write with confidence. Use words like "you will" instead of "you hope to." And reviewers don't just fund proposals; they fund you. So again, make clear why you and only you are uniquely positioned to accomplish your proposed goals. Now, if anyone's noticing something I'm doing throughout this presentation, I'm repeating myself because I'm sure you've kind of zoned out one, you know, here and there, and maybe missed a point here or there. That's why I'm repeating myself. High risk, high reward proposals are successful when the reviewer is confident in the PI. Okay, so you can get away with maybe something that's a little riskier, or maybe you didn't explain something so clearly. If they like you, they'll be more inclined to trust you. And then just ask mentors and peers to read your proposals, give feedback. You can look up previous successful proposals. Like NSF has all those proposals available, and you can email PIs and ask them to send you their proposals. They're happy to. And you can also set up Zoom writing parties to, you know, if you have other people that are writing proposals, you guys can, you know, be held accountable, set up times where you just sit there and write, and then you can, you know, share drafts and things like that. Okay, and I'm going to stop here. I also have some specific, I'm happy to share these slides with you later, because I have specific things about how to actually like write your specific aims. And I also have a link here that are examples of funded proposals, but I'm not claiming that they're good. These are funded proposals. That's all that I'm saying. So read them at your own risk. But yeah, I'm happy to share these share these slides, or I'm happy to send them to Orrin to share.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ray. That was great. And I am happy to share those if anybody wants to contact me. If you don't mind, I can send them
Yeah,
out.
and I can actually put them in the link too, or put them in the chat.
Okay. Okay, so Janet talked about setting up a lab and forming projects. Ray talked about how to get some money. And now Ben is going to talk about how to actually do research and teach at the same time.
Yeah, that's a big topic, and the first thing that I would say is that I think we lump PUIs all into one group as if they are all the same, but there is a massive difference in PUIs, and then there's also a massive difference in people in faculty and their fields. And so I'll just give you a quick snapshot of sort of my situation. I work at Augsburg University in Minneapolis. It's a tuition-driven school, so we are aware of how our enrollment is doing because that is directly tied to our budget. I have a 3-3 teaching load, so I teach 3 classes a semester. But we are right across the street from the University of Minnesota. So while we are research constrained, geographically being in Minneapolis and being within walking distance of the University of Minnesota's facilities and potential collaborations, those specifics to my job really have shaped my own experience. And wherever you would land, you would likely have a set of constraints or opportunities like that. So having attended these type of things before, I think I probably should do my due diligence by saying that one of the ways that people maintain successful research careers at PUIs is that they collaborate. And so you probably heard from Janet and Ray, but it's often noted. I see my internet connection is unstable. I'm sorry about that. The other thing that we hear a lot is that research is seasonal. So that you may not do as much research during the semester as you can during the summer. You should sort of plan things and then pick the times when you are gonna be effective or be productive in the lab. Okay, so those are the standard things that people say, I think. So I think I've hit those marks. What I would say, starting my 18th year as a faculty member and trying to survive, I've still got students in the lab, we're still managing to get publications out, etc., is that organization is super important. You know, I'm through our curriculum in teaching the 2nd or 3rd time. And so if you are recreating something you've already done in the classroom, that's really inefficient. And so somehow, you know, time is always limited, but somehow if you can try to really be organized in how you lay out your classes, how you keep your materials, that's just very valuable. And then I value research, and I think you know, the culture of my institution is to value students, and one of the ways I try to serve that is I try to find money for students, and so I value research to give them opportunities. But if I didn't value research, there are too many other distractions on campus, right, within my local environment that would grind my research career to a halt. If that makes any sense to those of you who've been in this position for a while, but I make it a priority. And then I also have come to realize that some of my job is just doing chores. Grading sometimes is a chore, and I just need to grade, or sometimes writing is a chore, depending upon what it is. Writing letters of recommendation for pre-meds that I may or may not have had a super close relationship to, but it's part of my job, and I don't want it hanging over me, so I just do my chores. And then I'll just underline again, I think at a PUI, there are just more risks to being distracted with campus politics or all kinds of things like that. And you know, if you want to teach well and research well, maybe you have to make a choice to avoid some of those distractions, right? And pick your battles or pick the things that you want to really contribute to. So that's sort of my second layer of thoughts on advice and things. And then I have one last set of thoughts, which would be things that I've realized as I get older. One is that in a career, your productivity windows, right? There are productivity windows. So, you know, at a certain point, you may have aging parents that you have to take care of, or you may have, you know, relatives dealing with illness, or, you know, young kids. All of those things are also pulls on your time and important. And so when you recognize that, hey, I actually can go into the lab and be productive and don't have to have anything else on my mind, and I'm able to do good work, I've come to value that time and feel fortunate for it, and then sort of really try to make use of that time, right? Because I remember with my first child, you know, thinking, oh, I'll get up and grade at 5 a.m. I'm a morning person, it's easy. But then, you know, at 3 or 4 a.m., your child is sick. And so suddenly, you know, your next few hours are diverted in their plans. And so best to try to get as much done as you can when you can, and take advantage of the hours you have to do things. And then, you know, I've seen a lot of things on academic Twitter or in the Chronicle about how people are leaving the academic careers, etc. You know, I think these jobs are just too big to be done well, or to be done the way a lot of people would define them as well. And so again, I think you have to pick the things that are going to be valuable to you. So I try to avoid, I try to be useful, but avoid campus governance, because that would take me out of the lab. And I figure once I'm not in the lab anymore, it would be hard to continue to maintain my work. So is that about teaching and research? Maybe, maybe not. But I would say that actually your students are in front of you sort of day in and day out. And so they demand your time, and it's easier to be held accountable by them and do right by them and do decent in the classroom. And the hard thing is carving out time for your research and not getting distracted with things that may be useful to the campus, but may not get you where you need to go. And so I guess that's what I would say. So hopefully that was helpful.
Great, thanks so much, Ben. So it's about 20 till, and I know some folks might need to leave around 8 o'clock, but I'm happy to stay on for longer if people want to keep having conversations. But there aren't very many of us, so if you have questions, please just go ahead and ask.
Might I suggest actually that we maybe, since it is a small group, it might be nice to introduce ourselves, I guess, just because I'm excited both to meet the panelists and just there aren't too many opportunities, I guess, to gather PUI folks. I mean, maybe there are, and I don't know about them yet, but for one of the reasons I really wanted to come to this, I'm Kate Jensen. I'm at Williams College in the physics department, and I was just really excited both to hear from the panelists, but also to meet some other fellow faculty who are sort of peers and colleagues, and to re-meet, I guess, in Michael's case. So
yeah, that's a great.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to meet you.
Did you say you were at Williams College?
I'm at Williams College in Massachusetts, yeah, in the physics department. And an assistant professor, but getting towards the end of my assistant professor time.
Okay. I can go next. I'm Orrin Shindell. I'm an assistant professor, also going up for tenure in the fall. I'm at Trinity University, which is a liberal arts college in San Antonio, Texas. We're a school of about 2,500 students, and I do biophysics, primarily experimental biophysics. mostly bacterial motility and also some membrane stuff.
I can go next. I'm Sarah. I'm one of the APS DBio members that Nancy was talking about, and I'm actually covering this for the newsletter. So thank you so much for the very detailed description of all the things involved in teaching and research and balancing them and doing grants. It's all going to appear. I'm at the same place that Janet is.
I can go next. My name is Andrew Mugler. I'm at the University of Pittsburgh in the physics department. I'm also the secretary treasurer of DBio. And so, I'm not at a PUI, but I actually went to Harvey Mudd College for my bachelor's degree. And through the NSFRU program, many summers I've worked actually with undergrads from different PUIs. So I'm enjoying the conversation.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Mikkel Jensen, and I'm at California State University, Sacramento in the physics department. I also do mostly experimental biophysics, although we had some students working on computational projects as well. So most of our stuff is mechanics, so rheology. We do some microbiology, but a lot of bulk rheology too. So that's the kind of stuff we do. And I will absolutely second the fact that collaborations are essential. That's been my experience too.
Okay, I can go next. My name is Mohammad Nuranidus. I'm actually postdoc in the Department of Mathematics at Florida State University. I'm working on biofield modeling stuff, post like 4D equation or whatever. And yeah, I'm not really assistant professor or anything like that in PUI universities or whatever, but I'm a part of APS, the bio community engagement, and we're going to have a postdoc kind of mentoring event in December, I think. So that would be something that I can get involved with the bio. But other than that, yeah, I'm here just to learn from you.
I can go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Avnish Narla. I'm not a faculty member. I'm a graduate student, actually, at the University of California in San Diego. I want to be a professor at a PUI eventually. As someone who has always been in our institutions, I don't know what that means and what that's like. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to hear from all of you, and I really appreciate that opportunity.
I can go next. So I'm Hoa Nguyen. I'm an associate professor at Trinity University. I'm in the math department. So I work with Orrin on the project that we're looking at bacterial motility in different kind of surfaces. And we also have some publication about, modeling a biofilm. So anyway, I'm excited to hear from you all about your experience.
Is that everybody?
Well, I'm Brett Green. I just finished a PhD in condensed matter physics at Penn State, and I am very much in the stage of exploring all my options. And there's so much out there that I think I just want to see a little bit of everything. I've had like one serious research experience in academia. As in an R1 institution, don't really have any experience with research at a PUI or anywhere else. And so I figured I'd start, asking around to find out more.
I think that's true for a lot of us that are now at PUIs, is that we didn't necessarily, most of us didn't had trained up at R1s. I certainly did, and didn't really know what I was getting myself into until I until I got there. But Ben, I was wondering, I found your comments about like prioritizing what's important and trying to stay away from campus governance and things like that may or may not be important to you, I guess. I found that kind of empowering, I guess, to hear as a piece of advice, because that's kind of my instinct as well. But there's also, I feel like there's maybe, do you ever have trouble kind of towing the line of not, I guess, saying no to things while also still kind of feeling like a good citizen of your department? Or are you able to make it clear that you're serving your sort of department and school via your research and students? And clearly, that's something that I've wondered, especially as I get, look ahead towards getting more senior and maybe having more requests. How do I say no? So without seeming like I just don't want to play, essentially, or something.
Yep. I want to be fully transparent. I probably am not the best person at not saying no, or at saying no. I'm probably not the best person at saying no. So, there are a bunch of ad hoc, two things. There are a bunch of ad hoc things that happen on campus that, any semester or any year, could draw you in. And so in the last few years, right, at my institution, right, the role of the honors program, I might have thoughts on that, but I just, nope, sorry, I'm not gonna really be super engaged about that, because I have other colleagues who are smart and valuable, and they will think about it, and I will just trust that their decisions are good decisions. So that was part of it, right? And then I think it probably is different for everyone. Some people are gregarious and outgoing, and so that, or some people would have skills that everybody would be looking for. And so then that might make it harder. But I guess I think at various points in my career, I have sort of decided what are the things that are going to matter. We built a new building within the last 5 years. So I spent 6 years really helping the institutional advancement department raise money. And I tried to do that well, and I tried to contribute there. But there were other things then that basically I didn't have time for, and I didn't feel bad about it. Finally, I'd say that, at my institution, we have the chance to move through different committees. I like our tenure and promotion committee because the work is clear, and the meeting time is clear, and I can read files at any hour. And so that's something that works with my schedule. But there are other committees that just, would be sort of expand to fill time, and so I avoid those, if that helps at all. And I'm sure other people have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would agree, especially with kind of picking your, we often get emails about service opportunities, from your dean, or there's always opportunities to get involved in a million different things. So I think picking the things that are important to you, which I'm pretty bad about too, saying no to things. So, making sure to think about, is this actually a committee that I can contribute to, something that I want to work on, and then trying to kind of limit your involvement. I think it's been, it's taken me many years, probably still working on that. So I think that's important. I remember when I was at my faculty orientation, the chair of the faculty senate was there and welcomed everybody, and then told everybody, I hope I don't see you on the senate for, another 6 years. I thought that was good advice.
Hi all, just to interject briefly, to Catherine's point, when I was trying to organize this workshop, I could not find anywhere a list of contact information for biophysics folks at PUIs. And I'm happy to start compiling one if you want to add your information. I think the link that I just put in there, you should be able to access.
Avinash, you can speak up. You don't have to raise your hand.
Okay, thank you. So, I had a tangential, a very like distant question, so I didn't want to interject if the conversation was continuing on the topic. But I had a question about departmentalization and how departments are organized and in the interaction between them in PUIs. I mean, in R1s, as an interdisciplinary person, it's frustrating. There is such little interface and contact, but I've always imagined that with smaller departments, there might be more collaboration, even in teaching as much as in research. And similarly, all of you seem to be in physics departments, even though you're interdisciplinary. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I'll say, I think, well, we're all in physics departments because this is APS,
Right.
B-Bio. So, I mean, that's my guess why we're all in the physics department. But in terms of, I think, again, what Ben was saying, like lots of PUIs are very different. Your institution will be very different. So like, there's not one set answer, but I think like you still have to be proactive. Like even if all, like at USD, like all the sciences are in the same building, but it's not just a given. When I showed up, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to form collaborations with people in chemistry and biology and stuff. But like your research time is limited. And so you don't have as much time to kind of just like try new things here and there. I mean, well, in some respects you do, in some respects you don't, but like, you might find that a lot of faculty members, well, yeah, I would say you have to be proactive, look at what other people are doing and seeing if you can form collaborations through, like, yeah, joint classes, joint research projects. It's definitely doable, but it's not a given. I mean, usually like you're closer, usually people, like the smaller departments, you have a better chance of, bumping into people and getting to know them. But at the same time, with limited research time, people might be less willing to do it. But it's a great thing. I would really encourage collaborations with people at other universities. I think they're, with R1s or with other PUIs, because you can find synergies. I think it would be a more natural collaboration to find somebody that's closer in line with what you're doing at another university.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about like training students. Do you have any suggestion on how to maybe like come up with a procedure so that, let's say you train a set of students and they're ready to do something, but then they're going to graduate, right? So then, you have to start a new batch of students trained from the beginning. And I feel like I've been in that cycle over and over, and I take a lot of time on training and couldn't get much, when they're done, right, graduate, then they cannot continue the project anymore. So I just want to know if anybody have some tips on that,
Well, I'll just say, like, I ended up just creating like a document, like creating a whole manual, a whole training manual that all the students have to go through. Like, it's on my website. You can see it. You can use it if it's relevant to you. But so any student that starts out in my lab has to go through this training module to learn all the basic like wet lab techniques and like optics techniques that we use at a basic level. And so I think like having that has really helped, because then I can at least say like, okay, you don't have to train every single person how to make like a microscope sample chamber, right? Because there's like a written, it's the protocol. And then if they're like, oh, well, I don't remember, you say like, well, just go to the, look in your manual, or like you're supposed to know this, you train someone to do it. And then then it's really important, like when a student's graduating, you should be trying to find, like when they're in their junior year, you should already be trying to find somebody to take over so that you don't have overlap. I mean, COVID really kind of hurt a lot of us because we lost that overlap and lost that training. But yeah, so I think that's important, having like some kind of like manual or having like a documented training thing that you can give to students to start out for the easy things. And then even if you have a senior student, you say like, we'll train the student to, make this buffer. The student might not do it exactly the way you would do it, but if it's written in a protocol the way you want it written, then it helps with word of mouth or like mistakes that get passed down through playing telephone.
Thank you.
Just want to jump in real quick that basically I've decided that written is great and I will go with a very detailed written thing. But also I've found many students just need to see. So for example, I can describe all I want about how you pipette this 10 microliters of this in an autoclaved pipette, but they can't translate when they're really inexperienced in the lab, they can't translate the words into the actual thing. And so I've recorded my students doing the very basic protocols. And I'm gonna, I'm actually in the process of loading that into my lab website. And so I'm gonna use it just like the Ray's using her written manual. Is I have a student comes in the lab, they, and I want them to make a buffer. I tell them, look, this is the protocol. This is why we're making this protocol, because this paper that, is related to research you're gonna do calls for this protocol or calls for this buffer. And if you don't know how to autoclave or pipette or pH something, here are the videos, right? And then, at least when they need help, it allows them to ask a more targeted question for help, as opposed to for the student just coming to you and saying, I really don't know how to do this, can you help me? Which tends to take a lot of time. And another thing that I found really helps is I try to make sure that any student that's working a summer with me has already been in my lab before. And that can be just, doing for credit, something for credit. Maybe they did a very intense individual project as part of a class or something like that. But I've learned that my summers are so valuable. I don't want to be spending a lot of my time helping someone from the ground, because 10 weeks passes really fast. And I found that I couldn't get to any semblance of a finished product with a student if they're starting from zero at the start of summer.
A bit on that note, with respect to kind of more experienced folks in the lab, do you guys have experience hiring either post-baccalaureate students? So I have my first one now who's leaving at the end of the week, and she's definitely been doing a lot of training, or postdocs, because that's something I'm also looking at. So I'm curious for any advice.
Well, I actually have to run, but I'm happy to. I've had several postdocs and postbacks. So yeah, I do have to run and pick up my kids, but if you want more information that other people here can't give you, you can feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to chat with you about it.
Okay.
But Janet knows my postdocs, and I've talked to Janet a lot about postdocs and postbacks. So maybe you can relay some of that information. But thanks, guys. Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Janet?
Ben, I wasn't sure if you were going to speak, so you would go first if you were going to say something.
Well, I have been fortunate to have graduate students and postdocs from across the street need to use our equipment, and then through that they have oftentimes provided some sort of mentoring, guidance, training to our undergrads. And so, I guess I haven't been the person signing the checks, right? So that is probably a little bit different, but there's a different level of maturity with the graduate students that I've worked with that is helpful for their project or for our collaboration, but then really also helps with undergrad. So the undergraduate in my lab this week, I've been busy with some things, but he's a graduate student who basically, checks in with him every day, making sure he's doing good work. And is making sure he's being very careful about cleanliness, which is super important in our field. And so, yeah, it is great to have people who aren't undergrads who can contribute to your research.
Okay, yeah, so I'm relatively inexperienced in terms of, hiring people. I just hired my first postbac. And my intention is for him to be that kind of point of continuity, right? So lab telephone is a real thing. You can have an undergrad teach another undergrad, and by the third round, the thing has no semblance to what you originally wanted them to do. And so, I found that the postbacs do work better with, they're less intimidating to my students. And I found that they help in a way that sometimes I can't, even if I were able to spend all that time in a lab, there are things I could not do for my undergrads that my postbac can. And then a related point, yeah, so as Ray mentioned, I'm actually one of the collaborators, so I met her postdocs. I think hiring a postdoc in a PUI is a interesting issue. So I personally thought quite a bit about it. I feel like I want to make sure I do right by any postdoc I would hire. And again, I have not hired any yet. But it is possible to find someone who wants to do kind of a combo research and teaching postdoc, where them working in as a postdoc in your lab at a PUI would also work for their careers. And Ray has had good success finding people like that, though I think currently the postdoc market, job market has kind of gone down. So it's hard to hire right now. And then another point, which is related, I don't know if it's helpful to you, but I know colleagues of mine who actually have on their grants funding allocating to graduate students at their collaborators labs. And so this wouldn't be a person who is present in your lab, but they would be contributing to your undergrads in the sense that they can be debugging protocols or talking them through problems or doing some of the more high touch mentoring that maybe we as faculty are too busy with other things to do. And so, yeah, I know people who make grad students work, but yeah, they would be housed at a collaborator and you would need to form a strong collaboration first.
Thanks. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the my situation is probably, I don't know how everybody's situation differs. Our institution is the teaching load is 4-4. So without any, teaching buyout or any extra support, it's pretty hard to get really meaningful research done during the semester. So a lot of it happens during the summer. And our department is undergraduate only, but I've worked with graduate students from another department. So our department is pretty small, but having the collaborations with biology, for example, who again, I can't remember who mentioned being proactive, but they didn't know that any physicists did anything bio-related, right? So that was a eye-opening experience to both chemistry and biology, and we have really nice collaborations with them now. And also with other institutions, I've worked with postdocs and graduate students in other institutions, and actually one of my undergraduate students that we had in our lab is now a graduate student at UC Davis, which is like, half an hour away. So that's really nice too, having not my own graduate students, but having students that are kind of involved where you can, I can be involved in the project. I'm not paying them, but I'm still benefiting from the work that they do and they benefit from the work that I do. So having that collaboration provides some continuity so that if I have a student that comes on and works with me for a year on a smaller part of the project, then there's still a thread of continuity through me, but also through, through the collaborators. Because yeah, and if I were just by myself in my own lab, it would be, I would be the thread of continuity, which makes it harder. So for me, the collaborations has really been the solution to that.
I'll just add that, this is probably institution specific, but you can find yourself in an institution or a department where there aren't too many people to talk to. And so interacting with postdocs and graduate students, there's the continuity angle or benefit, but there's also the benefit of just having someone who is, a little bit, who you can have an intellectual conversation with, where you don't recognize sort of having given the student all of the ideas over the course of 2 years and things like that. And so that's just, I think, been also valuable of working with other researchers, graduate students and postdocs, because they're bringing new ideas and fixing your bad ideas.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for me, that's being able to collaborate with the other departments is a huge source of community for me too, just as you say, both intellectually having other people to bounce ideas off of. I mean, we're 2 biophysicists in the department now. Myself and my wife Eliza are both there. But being able to collaborate, like to have a wider community that extends outside, I think, I don't know how other physics departments traditionally is. I feel like ours is a little bit siloed. So being able to reach outside to the College of Engineering or to the biology department or to other universities is super beneficial in a lot of ways. I wanted to ask a question if nobody else has any questions. I think there was one of the early points was being able to find equipment on the cheap through eBay and things like that. How are your universities with allowing you to buy through, we have all this stuff with approved vendors. I don't know if that's like a universal thing, where if you want to pick up something on eBay, it's actually pretty difficult. So I don't know if anybody has had experience with how to navigate that.
Our university, I don't have any problem buying lab equipment on eBay. I don't know if that's common or not, but it's pretty straightforward for us.
I think there may be major differences between private and government, sort of state-funded places, and I don't know exactly what the funding structure is, but my understanding is anywhere that's more state funding has a lot more levels of absolutely making sure that the taxpayers' money is being spent just so, and private colleges tend to be like, whatever, do right by us. So, and that's something, I mean, I really am grateful for being in a private college, rather, that we have Amazon business accounts and can just kind of like, I mean, just so it's so whatever the tax exempt stuff goes through, but it's like I buy random stuff off Amazon for my lab, and it feels like random. I mean, it's useful, important stuff, but anyway. So I suspect that could be a distinguishing factor as well, like just what the structure of the college or university is, and whether it's state funded or not.
Yeah, Catherine, I think that's probably the big thing.
Too bad if you're missing out on some good deals, though.
Though it can also be risky. I ordered a vacuum from eBay and received a call from the vendor and had to spend 45 minutes talking to somebody about a warehouse full of equipment. It's a very folksy conversation.
And then, I would say that I sometimes describe my institution as the Wild West, right? Being sort of tuition driven and whatnot. If you can figure out a way to do it, they'll let you do it. But, every once in a while you realize, wow, what were the legal implications of doing that? Shoot, I bet, I once had a student put a freezer on top of his Ford Escort and cart it across Minneapolis so we could have a freezer for the lab. And then afterwards I thought, maybe that wasn't so smart.
I'm curious if anyone knows how to get a course release, like from your own experience, like what kind of brand do you apply, a program?
the course releases I've had have been funded by the National Science Foundation, and through a CCLI grant many years ago, and then later through an RUI grant. But course releases are a little bit tricky because you could pay yourself to not teach during the school year, but that might cut into your summer funding, right? Because I think the program there are some rules that NSF has about how many months of funding they can provide. Probably also at the program officer's discretion.
Yeah, that's one thing that, you know, if I could give myself advice going back in time 7 years, is just being aware of that. For me, the institution support has been the biggest thing. So like, this again probably varies from institution to institution, but most of my release time comes from like 3 units, you know, or 1 course buyout to do a pedagogy enhancement, or to do like an institution funded, you know, 3 units to buy a project. Like a lot of the equipment has been through little pots of money that has freed up, that the institution is going to have a call for, you know, instrument proposals of a certain size or something like that. So again, it's probably very different from institutions to institution, but depending on the needs, that can be, like for me, that was huge. We had an instrument that cost $10,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you don't have a pot of money allocated to it, that could be a lot of money. And that was, you know, there was like a system-wide grant that basically is that size. And so we got the instrument funding through that, and then we got some release time through another thing, and so kind of pieced it together. Sometimes that can even be lower entry than like an NSF or NIH funding. And sometimes the time is really what you need. It's not always the money, it's the time that you need. So sometimes having a big grant that takes a lot of time to write is a barrier, but if you can find that 1 course buyout time, then that's been my experiences, you know, those little sort of internal things that don't necessarily come with a big overhead or come with a big pot of funding, but that can really be what gives you the space to do what you need to do. So.
This is super interesting to hear about a bit, because I think the party line at Williams, I think I've heard that if you dig in the faculty handbook, you can find the instructions for how to buy out a course, but the sort of the party line is it's not done. At the same time, our teaching load overall is more moderate. We have a 2-2 load and a pretty generous sabbatical policy in terms of how often we come up for sabbatical or we earn sabbatical. So in principle, everyone just sort of said, we'll just wait for your next sabbatical, because they do come. But it's interesting. And one of my colleagues said, no, you can buy out a course. You just have to really, really look for it. And it's much more expensive than other places. But no, I don't know anyone who's done it, and which is a very different mode than just about every other college or university I've heard of. So it's interesting to hear I've mostly, I guess because I trained up in R1s, like someone else mentioned, I've mostly heard about this in the context of R1s, but it's interesting to hear that it's actually common in PUIs as well, sounds like.
Well, let me jump in here. I guess I'm at a similar type of institution to Williams. I'm at a Claremont colleges, and for us, it is a no to try to buy out course time. I think for us, our mission is to provide, high faculty to student ratio education, and so it's seen as counter to the mission of the college for faculty to try to buy out their time with students. However, when I talk to individual, like dean of faculty level people have different ideas. So, you know, at some point becomes politics. You hit the right person, they may be like, actually, I think this school needs more scholarship. But definitely, I think for people who are at like a 3.3 or 4.4 type of institution, I think it's understood that you buying out a course is something you can do with a grant. At least that's the understanding I have from talking to people. And I think most people realize that if you don't have enough time, then you can't do the research. Yeah.
Interestingly, and maybe this is similar at Claremont, or I think you said you were at Claremont McKenna. I'm pretty sure though, if I said, hey, I got this amazing fellowship, can I take a semester leave without pay? Which to me is the same as buying out courses. I don't know. I think that could fly, but you'd have to couch it in that terms. And so it's not taking away from the educational mission kind of a thing. I don't know. I mean, I haven't tried. I'll see what I can do.
I also haven't tried, but if you try, let me know what happens, because I want
I'll try to get some amazing
fellowship.
fellowship. Yeah, I'll get some amazing fellowship and I'll let you know how it goes.
Tell them you're gonna generate really fantastic PR for them, because they love that stuff.
Yeah, I think it changes too with institution leadership, because we have a different dean now than when I got hired, and our RTP policy hasn't changed, but the dean that was there when I was hired had a different vision for what the college should be doing in terms of scholarly work, and of course wanted it to be. I mean, it's student driven. They wanted it to be centered on undergraduate involvement, but they thought that should be more that the research should be driving more of the undergraduate experience. And the new dean, I think, still believes that, but has a bit of a different vision. So sometimes the leadership can change, maybe a little bit of funding gets moved, and there's like an initiative to, like there was an initiative when I came in where you could get basically support time to craft a grant proposal for NIH or NSF. And that doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's because of the leadership change, or maybe higher up the leadership change. So sometimes things will appear or funds will be reallocated. So keeping an eye out for that, I think, is important. And also in terms of like the university mission, I mean, definitely if I buy out time for research, it gets, it has to support the mission of training undergraduates too, right? And like it's a high impact practice, like all those things kind of gets incorporated into that. And the buyout is, of course, it's always contingent on satisfying the teaching for the department as well.
Okay, I just wanted to mention, since some of the audience is people who aren't yet in a faculty position, and I imagine that this conversation is probably really overwhelming for you, because it probably sounds like, wow, it's all over the place, expectations. Some can buy out, some can't buy out. Some are teaching, 4-4, some are teaching 2-2. So I just want to tell you all, like, don't be too scared. Just be aware that there is a wide spectrum out there of basically how you earn your money as a faculty, right? So you can go to a school where most of the value you provide to the institution is just teaching the classes. So most of it is structured coursework. And then, there's another end of the spectrum where it's almost like rich people send their children to that school, almost. I mean, I know the school I work at costs a lot, and I'm very lucky to have many students who are on full rides, and they're not, they actually work their way in. But, the school I'm at, I would say, more focuses on individual attention and getting students involved in scholarship, right? And so accordingly, the time I'm compensated for is different, right? So at a school where you have a smaller teaching load, the flip side of that is there's higher scholarship expectations. So your job may be less safe, depend on what you want, right? Some people actually want a more teaching job, because at least if you do the teaching well, you will basically get tenure. I think the more scholarship intensive school you go to, the more likely it is that there's politics involved and you may not get tenure. So just be aware that the support, as long as the support they give you is aligned with what they expect, it's a good job. And if you have questions, I'm happy to talk to you more in detail.
Yeah, just to piggyback a little bit off that point, I think one thing also that I would suggest if you get a job or if you're applying for jobs is to make sure that that your department or your university's criteria for tenure are very clear to you. Because I've seen cases where it's kind of opaque and people can't tell whether or not they're doing what they're supposed to be doing or not. So I think that's one thing to definitely ask about and make sure that your department chair is talking to you and so on and so forth.
For those of you guys who are also at colleges and universities, do you feel like the expectations have been clear and sort of well aligned? If you don't want to answer, that's fine too. I guess it could be a fraught question. At Williams, they're very it's ridiculously transparent, which I appreciate. And the sort of research teaching balance was made quite clear from the beginning.
Yeah, in our case at Trinity, it's also, at least in my department, it has been very clear. I mean, more or less, there's a little bit of a gray area because you sort of have to, how many papers do you really have to write? What role in the papers do you have to take? Like some of that stuff can be a little bit flexible, but for the most part, I've had a lot of feedback all along. But I've seen people who have not had that. And so that's why I mentioned it.
Yeah.
So for us, oh, sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
no, I was just going to add, I think, again, that's advice I wish I could give myself, back when I was applying for jobs. But yeah, definitely find out like what are the RTP criteria at your institution, because it differs a lot. Like with ours being 4-4, teaching is heavily weighted, research less so than I'm sure at a 2-2 institution, for example. I feel like ours were very transparent though. We actually have yearly reviews where it goes to like the college RTP committee. So you get the feedback every year pre-tenure. So you kind of know, like by the time you write your big final package, you pretty much know, hopefully, what your outcome is going to be. So I felt like I've had feedback the whole way.
Yeah, so I also really benefit. I'm only halfway through. I just got the reappointment, but I do feel like the yearly reviews, which we also had, was super helpful. And I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry, someone else can jump in first.
Part of the process here was that, so you mentioned yearly reviews. We basically had two kinds of reviews. There were formal and informal reviews. So in even years, you do a formal review, which is kind of like, it's almost like a test run for your tenure packet for what you've done so far. And I actually don't know what the process at R1 universities are like, but I'm not sure you have to do the same level of like progressive accounting of your work. But although they're a pain, they're actually useful for two reasons. One is that it forces feedback from your department. And two is it forced me, at least, to actually keep track of what I was doing rather than let it sort of pile up and then have to like pull it out from somewhere later.
Yeah, adding to your CV every single semester is a great idea. And I just remember what I was going to say is a rule of thumb that I've been told for tenure requirements is you want to bring in, or generally you try to bring in as much grants as you got in startup. But I think and that's generally the case for R1s. I think for most PUIs, you're okay if you don't bring in a grant. For where I am at, I'm told that I'm supposed to at least attempt to get one. And they will reward us for trying to get one, but they won't hold us accountable if we are unlucky or, it's a rough year or something like that. And so I really appreciate that part of things, because as a graduate student, I'm sure many graduate students can relate to this. I would watch my PhD advisor disappear for a month at a time trying to write grants. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to be in that position. You know, I don't want to be the person who have to tell a grad student or postdoc that you need to go because I don't have money. So that's something that I'm really grateful for.
I don't have anything to add on this. It's been a long time since I went through the review process, and I don't think I really, I don't know, I don't think I really got a lot of great feedback. But also, you know, I think that sometimes institutions are happy to have people who are contributing, and they don't want to mess with that, right? And that's another distinction that might exist in PUIs.
Well, I don't know how long folks want to stay. Like I said, I'm happy to stay on here as long as you like. But one question I just did want to ask, in case anybody has any feedback, is part of what I was hoping to get out of this event was just the chance to meet some new people, which it's hard to otherwise do. Does anybody have any thoughts or feedback that you want me to take back to the committee that you think would be useful for PUI folks? Other events that we might be able to do, or suggestions? So.
I mean, I guess I might enjoy more things like this, or I mean, ideally more, you know, in person at, you know, at meetings or whatever as well. Definitely, as I've been, you know, when I decided to go to Williams, so I applied quite broadly. I wasn't specifically targeting a PUI, and just found a really, really good fit for me at Williams, and took the job. But a lot of people in my research community, as I wasn't tied into any kind of sort of PUI network, a lot of people in my research community ask me questions like, well, are you still going to do research, or are you going to teach, you know, sort of what's the, and I found that I kept feeling like I kind of had to explain myself. So I feel like if I'd known more people or had more of a network, that might have helped that transition, or at least asked them how they had done that. And so, yeah, so I had a lot of questions about whether I was still going to be doing research, or what the, you know, just there's a lot of assumptions, I guess, that all PUIs are the same. So yeah, so I don't know. So something like this, I think as a sort of earlier in my career would have been nice. And now it's great. I mean, still, it's like, I feel like I don't know that many people who are at PUIs. So that would be fun to do more things like this, even just informally.
And I guess jumping on to Catherine's point, I think I've had good success collaborating with people who are also at PUIs, just because people at PUIs tend to focus on projects that have a longer times, can go slower without getting scooped, basically. Because sometimes when I try to collaborate with someone in R1, they want a project to move so fast that I cannot involve an undergrad, right? And so I would personally appreciate, you know, maybe a March meeting or something, some big event like that, having just like a meet a potential collaborator PUI kind of networking event. Thank you for organizing.
That's in it. Do folks usually go to March meeting? Is that, I typically go. Maybe that would be, I wonder if that's something we could try to do, is to organize like a biophysics PUI informal gathering at the March meeting.
And
well,
depending,
if it's just a broadly physics PUI, might actually be fun too.
Yeah, that's more or less what I was about to sort of say, is that might be, you know, that there's, I guess it depends on the size of the conversation. If you have a dozen people, maybe you can have a conversation. If it's, or like a DSoft, DBio, DPoly, GSNP kind of the soft half of the meeting. I'm pretty new to crossing over into DBio, so it's a new adventure as well. But like, I found some really interesting plants, so I guess I'm in. I didn't find them. They're all over the world, but a botanist actually here at Williams in the biology department sort of keyed me into it. So it's as you said, collaborations. So hi everyone, I'm in DBio now, I guess.
So I normally attend the Biophysical Society meeting much more frequently than APS. And I know that their annual meeting usually has a PUI session focused on something like getting a job at a PUI or whatever. And those sessions are really well attended by sort of postdocs and grad students. I mean, you can find 50 postdocs and grad students who are like, how do I get that job? And so those are well-attended sessions. And you're thinking, well, it's not exactly what you think it is. But.
Is there anything else anyone would like to talk about before we jump off? Again, I'm not trying to rush you. I also don't want to force you to sit here forever.
Yeah, nothing more for me at the moment, although it's getting late East Coast, so I'm close to bedtime.
Yeah, sorry about the time.
No, actually it worked out because I had something else sort of right after work, so it worked out just fine.
Okay.
But this has been great, so it's been nice to meet you all.
Yeah, nice to meet you all. Feel free to, email me if you want to talk to me some more.
Yeah. And also, if anybody wants to email me with any thoughts or ideas that you think the Community Engagement Committee could, I'd be happy to take it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thank you so much, folks. Take care.
Thank you all. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Janet.
Thanks.